Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another edition of Think and Grow Rich Live. My name is Dr. Peter A. James, and I am so excited to dive on into another principle, another chapter of Napoleon Hill's infamous book, Think and Grow Rich. Of course, I am not here alone today, and we have a distinguished guest, but I got to let you know something. I got to ask you something about this persistence chapter that we're diving into today. What does it look like when you are not persistent, when you give up? Napoleon Hill says the majority of people are ready to throw their aims and their purposes overboard and give up at the first sign of opposition or misfortune. But those individuals who don't do that, who kind of persist through the challenges and are very have that tunnel vision, are very focused on what they need to do, they're looked at very differently. Napoleon Hill goes on to say Henry Ford was generally misunderstood to be ruthless and cold-blooded. This misconception grew out of Ford's habit of following through in all of his plans with persistence. So today, folks, we're diving in a little bit more on persistence. But as I mentioned earlier, I am not alone. First and foremost, let me bring in the master wealth builder, Ann McNeil. Good morning to you, Ann McNeil. How are you doing today?
Oh my goodness, Peter, I was so excited. I came on a little earlier. That's how I'm doing. Listen, Peter, this persistence principle, I call it insurance for assurance for success. So I am so excited to hear from our special guest today, but I am persistent until I succeed with a spirit of excellence. Glad to be here.
Good stuff. We are so always glad to have you here, Ann McNeil. And Ann McNeil, you are managing our YouTube today. So definitely keep an eye on our YouTube guests because we want to hear from them as we dive deeper into this persistence. Galen Bingham, how are you doing, sir? The leadership strategist. What's going on
Fan,
with you and persistence?
fantastic, man. I love this principle because this principle is how we deliver against the things that we say that we want. I'm fond of saying the only thing I know for sure is that no plan will go according to plan. And that's where you need persistence. Are you committed to achieving your goal no matter what? Because it's the no matter what that's going to make the difference between a dream and an actual plan. So I can't wait to get into this conversation. Our guest is someone who has absolutely persisted. He knows a lot about what it takes to actually accomplish your goals. Can't wait to get into this conversation.
It's going to be a great one for sure there. But we have a full house today there too, Galen. Louise, how are you doing today? How persistent are you today on a Saturday morning, Louise?
We, hey, I'm here and my time zone is not even, it's just barely after 7. So I'm here. You're in the same time zone. So yes. So I know persistence is that secret sauce, is that little element that at one point things will get hard.
Hmm.
Things will get, odds will get against you. And especially once you start climbing and you get better and better, once you understand these principles, yes, of course, things get easier. But remember, at the top is very lonely and sometimes it's harder there. So that's exactly. And as well, Peter, those goals, those that the real goals are those that they're not easy. The real goals, what transform you, are those that they're not for everybody.
Yeah.
So yes, persistence is the key element, just like Galen said.
Yeah, that's good stuff there, Louise. And it forces me to go back even a few weeks to the challenges of being persistent when we encounter roadblocks, obstacles, and hurdles. And Napoleon Hill also talks about the mastermind philosophy, the surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals. And I have to be the first one to say, oftentimes when you're persistent, but as Napoleon Hill says, there are challenges, there are misfortunes. It's easy by yourself to mail it in, give up, which is why it's so important to have those individuals around you to challenge you to your next level, to challenge you and ask you, hey, that's not what you signed up for. You didn't sign up to give up. So what's the next step in this process? And I know I'm not alone in this philosophy of feeling a certain type of way after you've been going through it for a while. But I want to hear a little bit more about that today and what that has looked like for us as we've had these challenges. And I think this is a great segue to bring in our distinguished guest. And let me read a little bit of information about our distinguished guest, if that's all right. Aaron Allen is a business leader, an aviation consultant, and workforce strategist dedicated to reshaping the future of aviation through education. As the president of Urban Aviation Group, he develops industry-aligned STEM and CTE paths that help young people, especially those from underserved communities, break into piloting, drone operations, aircraft maintenance, and aerospace careers. A U.S. Air Force veteran, we won't hold that against him, FAA licensed airframe and power plant mechanic, and a certified drone pilot, Aaron's aviation journey began hands-on and mission-driven. After recognizing the diversity gap in the industry, he committed to building programs that remove financial and systemic barriers to access. With 3 decades of experience in leadership development and organizational growth rooted in the field of engineering, Aaron blends technical expertise with strategic vision. He has spent 15 of those years designing and delivering learning strategies across North America, Australia, and leading national training initiatives, coaching senior executives, and building scalable programs that stick. Today, he's a speaker, a mentor, and program architect, helping schools, districts, and industry leaders connect classroom learnings to real-world aviation careers, equipping the next generation to not only enter the industry, but lead that industry as well. So excited. Aaron, good morning to you, sir. How are you doing on this
Good morning.
fine
Good
Saturday
morning.
morning?
I am doing awesome. It sounds like I think we have someone from the Army or the Marines on board.
Definitely not the Marines there, Aaron. I don't know about that. The Army.
But I
Good,
am doing awesome.
good to have you with us. We have so much to talk about, Aaron, but in that bio that I just even led up with as well, one of the things that jumped out as me as being an African American male in the aviation industry, you have to be persistent.
Absolutely, absolutely. When you look at the aviation industry, um, Black people, African Americans, make up less than 1%.
Wow.
And so of that 1%, women, African American women make up even a smaller minority.
Wow.
Now, it's just not in aviation. I saw this throughout my career when I went to school for my mechanics. I was always the one, maybe two of Black people in the class. When I was in the Air Force flying on AWACS, I was a computer tech during Desert Storm, Desert Shield. It was a lot of times, a majority of the time, I was the only one. And most of the Black people that flew, we had a saying. We called ourselves the Highlander because there could only be one.
Love that movie, by the
Yes, awesome movie. But throughout that process led me to really focus and look at how aviation is just not something that we gravitate towards. And what sparked the idea of actually starting um, the program and getting kids into it was while I was in the Air Force. I'll tell you a quick story. I was flying, we were doing a mission during Desert Storm, Desert Shield over in Saudi Arabia. And I was up front talking to the flight engineer. Now, mind you, I had already had my aircraft mechanics license, so I knew more about the plane than most of the people that were in the flight deck. So him and I were having a great conversation, and we started talking about flying. And the pilot that was flying turns around and spins and gives me that look, kind of looks me up and down. It's like, you can't fly. And I was just like, what do you mean I can't fly? And the way he said it just pierced my soul. And me
Mhm.
being me, I was like, not only can I fly, I can fly this plane. Now, mind you, I had only flown little small planes. So while I was in school, I learned to fly because I worked on a private airport. He gets up and says, if you can fly, fly it. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So I jumped in the seat, I took the controls and actually flew the plane. Now, did I fly it well? Absolutely not. But I flew it well enough where he knew that I knew what I was doing.
Mm.
And when I went back to my seat, it's just something came over me, and it was like I ca- I hate that look that he gave me. And then
Mm.
I started thinking back, and I was like, I've always been the only one. I'm tired of being a Highlander, so to speak.
Mm.
And I was like, so one day I'm going to start, a program that teaches kids from my neighborhood how to fly. I'm from New Jersey. I grew up in Elizabeth, so it was inner city. I was like, I'm gonna teach kids how to fly, and when I get older. Well, a couple years ago, I woke up and realized I was older, and so I started the program. And I got into one school system, which led into another school system, which led into me talking to different people, and it's growing. And at the end of the day, I'm teaching kids about all aspects of aviation, and whether they want to go into aviation or not, it's exposing them to it and letting them know that they can do anything. And I tell them, aviation has taken me all around the world,
Yeah.
and you too can go all around the world, and you can make a lot of money at the same time.
Cool. Like sounds like a win-win situation to me. Yeah. Thanks so much for giving us a little bit of that background and even your expertise from that perspective. Louise, I want to pull you back in as we get ready to tee off this video. Do you mind providing a short intro for us, sir?
You know I don't mind. This is one of my favorite parts of every single weekend because this video every single time brings me a drops of knowledge or deeper understanding of the principles. So thank you, Anne, for making this video because it's like basically exactly what every principle is based on. Pay attention, people. Get pen and paper out because something is going to stick to you.
Number one is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step two is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step three is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically. But we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number four is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number five is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spend some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
Alrighty, we are back and we have Aaron Allen who's going to be diving in, telling us about his journey, telling us about how persistence he has been throughout to accomplish what he has been able to accomplish. And I think you have a question for Aaron.
Absolutely. And we actually teed up my question before the program started, Alan. I always like to ask all of our guests, what was your first introduction to the book before we get to the principle?
So my first introduction to the book was probably not even probably. It was when I was in the military. I was overseas in Saudi Arabia, and one of the captains gave me the book. He was actually stationed there, and he gave me the book, said, "You need to read this." And I didn't take him. I read it, but I didn't take it seriously. I was young, was didn't hadn't experienced enough life. Fast forward to about 5 or 6 years ago. I joined NSA, then I joined Black NSA, and then of course Miss Ann, wonderful Miss Ann, gets me to join the Think and Grow Rich Mastermind group, and that from that moment on, it's made me really see the book in a different light and go through and start using the principles of the book. So my introduction was, while it was almost 30 years ago, it really didn't come to fruition or come to light until I joined Black NSA.
Okay, follow-on question, Peter, if I may. Can you share with our listeners the story you shared with Gayla before we started about when you did the reread and the difference between then and now and your persistence?
Absolutely. So when I did the reread, when it came down to persistence, I started going through the 8 factors. And it was at a time where I wasn't being quote unquote persistent. And it reinvigorated me, letting me know. And I started to think back how, wow, I'm not doing some of these principles, especially the last two, the willpower and the habit. I fell out some of the habit of the 8 factors of really going through the process. And I look back before I fell out of the habit, how well things were going for me business wise and life wise. And then once I stopped going through my daily affirmations and really all the daily practices, things start to drift off, and I was wondering why. And while there can be quote unquote excuses, that's what I'm gonna say, that I can use we're dealing with family issues, I still fell off. And then in preparing, doing the reread, it came back to me. It's like, no matter what, it's a habit. And once I started back on that trail, doing my habits, I can see things start ticking back up.
Thank you.
Good stuff there. Galen, I know you have some questions for Mr. Allen here.
Yeah, I'm always curious because very similar to you, I think I was first exposed to the book maybe 35 years ago. Something recommended by my dad and required and that kind of thing. And there's some implications if your dad asks you to do something, you can't demonstrate that you've done it, right? So I read enough to be able to pass that test, but I didn't really get into it. What made this more than just a book for you? What was that point where you said, hey, wait a second, not only do I really need to read this for real, but I really need to do the things that the book suggests that I do. You mentioned affirmations, writing down the success formula, that kind of thing. What made this more than just a book for you? What was that turning point?
So I guess the turning point is when I came back to the book and I really started looking back over my life. And I realized that while I wasn't doing things exactly by the book, I was doing them. And maybe it was my subconscious mind reminding me subconsciously that, hey, you read this before. This is in there. So when I was able to put it all together, going through school, going through the military, living in overseas, and just going through the whole process of constantly learning and how I had to stay persistent in that, it came to me like, wow, all the principles are there. It's been through my life. If I really start really focus in and intentionally go
Mm.
through it and start doing it, what could happen? And from there, I started intentionally, and things started getting better and better. I was like, okay, well, I'm sold on it now.
Fantastic. I love that word in intentionality, because we can do almost anything. Any of us can have success accidentally, right?
Yes.
If I run out of gas and say, "Hey, give me one of those tickets while I'm here," and make $1 million that way, well, that was success, but it was accidental. This is about how can we achieve success intentionally and on purpose. And I love your introduction. You're introducing that word.
Awesome. And you have to be intentional. I heard a quote years ago. I'm gonna give him credit, but it may not be him. But I believe it was Les Brown, so he's gonna get credit even if he didn't say it. He was like, more people spend more time planning their vacations than they do planning their lives.
Mm.
And so with that intentionality, you have to be intentional. Success just doesn't happen all the time. Then, like you said, you can get lucky once in a while, but why depend on luck when you can be intentional about it?
Fantastic, fantastic.
Good stuff.
Dr.
Luis,
Peter?
before we go to you, I want to make sure that I acknowledge some folks that we have with us today in our studio on Zoom. We have Angela Sturgis and Tiffany Settles. Hope you both are doing well. Please let us know what questions you might have for Aaron. On YouTube, we have Meta Wilson, Doretha Dennis, Carla Hill, and Laura Jackson. Thank you for coming as always. Shannon Charlton, Jason Murray, and Toba Adin, Diane Kingflowers. Thank you all for joining us early Saturday morning as we dive on into persistence. Luis, what questions might you have for Aaron, sir?
Yeah, I was paying attention to his resume. Aaron, fantastic, fantastic bio, fantastic resume. You're making an impact on people's and on other people's lives, definitely, especially with the youth. So I'm going with that. You were given this book by your dad and at a fairly early age, where because this book is not easy to understand. And when we're young, my God, it looks sometimes it feels like he's speaking in a different language, right? So, what is that working with these new generations, right? You're going with the public school and different things. How is this persistence, this book, working for them? How do you approach and install the principles in these kids?
So one of the things that I do not tell them outright what we're doing. I introduce principles slowly throughout class, and then I'll reference back. Okay, so you know where I got this from. And for those of you who are interested, you can read this book, or these are some of the things that you need to do. This is how I got to where I am. So if you whatever path you choose to take, these are step-by-step principles that can help guide you to that. And now it's no guarantee, but it will you you raise your level of chances to succeed by following it.
Absolutely. Yes, because you were mentioning, and that's fantastic, something that you were mentioning earlier, like unconscious competent, right? We follow the principles. So sometimes we don't even know they're there. But that's the beauty of these principles. They work. They
Right.
work no matter what you do for relationships, they work. And one of the things that you were saying, the habits, right? The positive habits. What is that habit? Because we have, when we're not doing good in life, it's because we keep repeating the bad habits. Well, it's just the opposite, right? The law of polarity. What is one of those things that you would recommend to our audience that when things get hard, right? When things are not going your way, what is that little thing that keeps you going and use persistence?
So when things get hard, when things go away, first and foremost, my faith, which is part of the book. My faith is the biggest thing that I turn to whenever I start feeling like things are we're not progressing or hard times come because life will life on us. So it's going to happen. And a lot of times with leaning on my faith, I have my regiment and where I get up in the morning, I have my daily devotion, and then I have my me time. Um, it's usually about an hour or two or so. When things get hard, I double down on that first hour, giving gratitude, understanding, and really doing that deep dive in me and seeing what I can change. A lot of times we tend to look outwardly and see what we want things outside to change that we have no control over. So I try to look inwardly, saying, okay, what can I do to change? And if it's nothing, then there's a verse in the Bible that says, stand still and be steadfast. So I'm just like, I got to stand still and I trust in my in faith and have believe in God. So I'm gonna let him do what he needs to do to move me through this. And that usually works for me. Trust me, it is not easy. Everything I'm saying, it may come across like, oh yeah, it's easy. It is not easy because when you're in the middle of the barrel, so to speak, you're in it. And it's hard to just stand still because we want to do things to get out.
That is wonderful because you said what you're doing, but you mentioned you double down on the effort, you double down on the discipline, you double down on what it works, right? And the late Bob Proctor used to say, amateurs have the best attitude when things are going the right way. Only pros focus and double down when things are going the wrong way. So, and I love that because that is one of the things that you're just nailing persistence right there. If it works, because nothing can be linear, right? We know
Right.
life is full of cycles. So I love that. I love that, and thanks for giving that advice to our audience, because we let go too easy. We give up we way too easy. So thank you for that. Thank you. I love the routine in the mornings. That's something that everybody should apply. Have a morning routine.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thank you so much, Louise. Galen, I see you have a question there, sir.
Absolutely. I was when I was listening to your answer to the last question, Aaron, I was reminded of something I heard from Will Smith. And Will Smith said, the only difference between me and another actor is that I'm not afraid to die on the treadmill, right? Uh, Tell us about a time when you were in something and the only reason you succeeded was because you weren't afraid to die on the treadmill. It's like all these things were conspiring against you, it seemed. There was no luck in the equation, but you just decided, you know what? Either I'm going to succeed or I'm going to die on this treadmill.
Awesome. Well, unfortunately, I'm gonna say unfortunately, but fortunately, because things that don't kill us make us stronger. So I have a lot of those on the die on the treadmill story. But as you were talking, one thing jumped into my mind. When I was in the military, because I was a flyer, I had to go to survival school. And part of survival school was POW camp. And during the POW camp, they do everything in their power to mentally and physically tire you out. So, we were already physically tired, so they really doubled down on the mental part. And because I was once again was the only black guy there, they really came at me with, all different types of things trying to break me. And they separated me from the group and they really singled me out because I'm not a small guy on top of on top of everything. And it was one point where I had to make a choice. Either this is what I was going to do, and I was going to finish the task at hand. And trust me, when I say during POW camp, you forget that it's an exercise. You literally start thinking that this is real. That's how good they are, and that's what they want you to do. And it came down to a moment where I was either going to give up or I was just going to die. And literally, I made that decision right in the moment of being cold and wet and almost mentally broken, where I just said, you know what? I want this. Other people have gone through this, and if they can go through it, I can go through it. So whatever happens is going to happen. But one thing is not going to happen is I'm going to give up. I'm not going to quit no matter what. And if I got to die here and they ship my body back, I'm okay with it. And it was at that moment of coming to that realization that, believe it or not, things got better because no matter what they say, it's like, you can't hurt me. You can't break me. You're not going to break me. Then it became a matter of my will over your will. You're going to break me? No, you're not. You're not going to break me.
I love it. I love it. And that's the line, right? Very, very often people will have these glamorous things that they would do, these honorable things that they say that they would do, but they're never really tested. And until you're tested and when will your will take over? Because our minds will play tricks on us. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Aaron, I want to take you back to the your military transition, being a veteran. Um, you and I probably see or even know of individuals who have had more of a challenging time transitioning from being in service to out of service, even after years. Um, as you reflect on your transition, what worked for you that allowed you to get traction to for your career to continue to thrive even after you left service? I know persistence is in there a little bit, but would just love to hear a little bit of that story about how that transition was as you reflect on it.
So my transition was probably different than most. Uh, um, when I got out, just before I got out of the military, I found out that I had a son,
Mm.
or potentially had a son, who was already 5 years old. So I had him before I went in, but I didn't know he was mine. And so when I got out, my goal was to one, confirm that if it was my son or not, and then start building a life with him. What I didn't know is when I got home, literally 2 days after I got home, I met the woman of my dreams, and ended up marrying her a year later, my beautiful wife, and she had a son. So now I find out that I have a son. I'm about to marry this woman who has a son. It wasn't no transition for me. I had to hit the ground running. Here I am going from single, just living life la vida loca, so to speak, to now I got being a full-fledged adult with a wife and two kids. And so that was it. It probably I needed that to not have that downtime to transition into to really focus in on my priorities, which was taking care of my family, being there for my boys, and making sure that my wife had what she needed. So that was my transition out, which like you and I both know that that's not the normal transition. People usually slowly reintegrate themselves into society. I had to jump in head first.
But that's probably a good thing also, because sometimes that slow transition allows you to fall into bad habits. You
Absolutely.
had to sink or swim right
Exactly.
away, right?
Exactly.
A good,
And I had grandeurs of coming out, starting my own business
yeah.
and everything. And my wife looked at me like 2 months before we got married. She was like, "You need a real job." And I was just like, Okay, yes, dear. That was probably my first yes, dear moment in marriage over 30, almost 30 years ago.
Oh, many more, I'm sure there,
Absolutely.
Aaron. And McNeil, on that note, and McNeil, yes, please, your next question.
Yes, I really love the I really love the dialogue in terms of the stories you're sharing. I'd like for you to go back in your childhood, if you will, and tell us if you can remember a situation or a story where you realize the benefit and power of being persistent, even though you may not have called it that. And I'm asking that question because I know many of us who are listening have children or grandchildren or nieces and nephews, and I think that we can instill these principles in them earlier. And so I'll tell this quick story as you think about that. My granddaughter was 3, and she kept saying, I need help. Now, y'all don't call child abuse on me anyway. She said, she would say, I need help. I need help. And I went and I got one of those ladies. You remember back in the go-go dancing days, you had these big wide belts that you would wear on top, and you know, have it on. So I got one of those big belts. And I turned it over it was leather, and turned on the back side. And I wrote the words bold, HELP, on the back of the belt. So every time she would tell me she needed help, I would get her some help. I never used it, so let's be clear. I never had to use it. But she became so persistent, if you will. Okay. I didn't realize the impact that my daughter would get upset with me. Mama, you're going to scar my child forever. Well, anyway. So can you think of, a point in your childhood where persistence started showing up, but you might not have called it that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually, that is an easy one for me. I can tell you exact thing is when I actually fell in love with aviation. My father worked for a aviation parts manufacturer. And so I was exposed to it, but I really didn't, he went to work and, we got to eat. That was my idea back then. One day he brings home a little nut, actually, that looks like that. He brings home something that's this small and gives it to me. And I forget what he said to me or where it was from. It was like from some plane or some aircraft or something. And I spent hours looking at that nut, hours and hours. And it was at that moment that the spark of aviation, the love of aviation came, upon me, and it hasn't left. Well, of course, as a kid, you start going telling people, "Oh yeah, planes, da, 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 how great they are." And everyone just looked at me like, "What are you talking about? What? You're weird." And I'm like, "What do you mean I'm weird? Doesn't everybody love airplanes?" And they're like, "No. Well, why do you love airplanes?" And I'm like, first and foremost, just look up. I grew up in Elizabeth, which is right next to Newark. Literally, we had to stop class because planes would be flying and we couldn't hear the teacher. But growing up, constantly being told I was weird, constantly being told, "Why do you love planes?" Because no one else around me loved planes. That did not deter me. That fire was so deep, and I had to remain persistent because if I listened to the outside world, I would have gone straight into engineering and all that. But my love was for aviation, and I did not let anyone deter me from that, no matter how weird. And I started embracing it. Yes, I am the weird kid. Yes, I am the geek, the nerd. And at this point, I tell kids today, it's okay to be the geeks and nerds. They run the world. So, it's okay, but I had to have that thick skin, that persistent, because back then I just called it thick skin, but I had to be persistent about the passion that was in me.
Thank you.
I love that. I love that story there, Aaron, because oftentimes we'll have the naysayers in our ear or around us. Sometimes, dare I say, naysayers are even in our families, our extended families, and they love us. And so they want to give us that loving advice to keep us safe, right?
Right.
And we have to, if we have that dream, that goal, we have to overcome it in order to realize it.
Right.
right? And it sounds like that's what you were able to do, even though everybody in your neighborhood or even in your circle may have not seen the vision
Right.
as well.
And that's still part of today.
Mhm.
Everyone can't see the vision. I'm in a unique situation of what I'm doing, not just aviation, but aviation education. So people kind of look at me with they cock their head like, really? It's like, hey, yes. Ask me about it. I'll be more than happy to tell you.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Louise.
Yes, sir. No, I love it. I love it, Aaron, because you're right. Sometimes they care so much for us that they want us to play safe, right? But playing safe has got no inventions, no discoveries, no nothing of consequence. So lately, Aaron, what is if you can share a story or the passage in your life that from the last 5 years, right? Kind of our world changed about 5 years ago. From when those times, right? From 5 years ago to now, have you been able to use persistence in something that it was not going your way?
Absolutely. From 5 years ago, once I decided that this is what I wanted to do, I was going to start really teaching kids about aviation. I went through a couple of iterations of thought processes of how I was doing. I started a nonprofit, figured I was going to raise money and teach kids about aviation via that way. Um, and raising money is hard, especially when you're asking for people, especially 5 years ago when everybody's holding on tight to everything. And then one of my friends mentioned school systems, and did I ever think about talking directly to schools and putting my program in the school? And I was like, no, I hadn't. I had already developed a program which is called the Aviation Educational Program, an AEP, that covers all aspects of aviation. So now I had to learn how to talk to schools and who to talk to and go through that process, which is way different. Do I talk to the principal? Do I talk to a teacher? Do I talk to the school board? So it was really doubling down and focusing in on, okay, I'm going to focus on the school system. So I kind of let the not-for-profit stay stagnant and switch gears to focus on the school system. And trust me, people don't want to really talk to you, especially if you're not a pilot. And I didn't come in a pilot. I look the way I do. I came from a more of an engineering background, even though I had my federal license. So people couldn't see me in aviation. So now I have to really get them to talk to me and to persist and show what I was doing and how my program would help and give them my story. And once they can see that, they were once again, I got my first school system, which we had an after school program in it. And trust me, all eyes were on me watching, vetting me because it's like, you're not a teacher. I was like, but I've been in corporate America. I teach adults. So technically I am now shifting to kids. But it was constantly pushing through and going through that and refining my program and then believing and the biggest thing was me believing in what I was doing which is my purpose in life was to teach kids about aviation and leadership and give them all the lessons learned to be able to show them where the minefields are in the world so they wouldn't have to go through it.
That's amazing because yeah, it's starting down. I mean, starting literally from the ground on something that you're not the expert, right? You have to learn. And I love it because, but then this is the cool part because once that becomes a full circle, now I'm sure you're telling other people how to get from grants to get into the school system and all that. I love it. I love it. And there's nothing more important than giving our young fellows, our students, that they know, giving them the opportunity to understand that they have choices,
Absolutely.
that they have choices. So no matter, even if you come from a family of doctors, engineers, or thieves, whatever it is, right? That whatever the family's been going down, that we can change that, that we don't have to fall into that mold, that we can have our own story. And it won't be easy, but that's the cool part. That's the best part. That's one of the things that I like to say to people. This is the fun part. When you are gonna do it on your own, or you're gonna do something different that is you don't even know what's out there. So I love it and thank you because yes, I love to work with kids. I work with kids all the time, and there's nothing to see when more important to me. There's more nothing more important to see and feel when that ball goes off. It's
Absolutely.
amazing. So
Absolutely.
thank you, and yeah, passing it back to you, Peter.
Actually, I'm gonna pass it right over to Galen as well. Go ahead, Galen.
Yeah, I talk with my clients a lot about this idea of marrying the objective but dating the strategy. And very often people will get married to the strategy. I want to do it this way. It has to be this way. This has to be the formula. Talk about a time where you married the objective. This is the outcome I'm looking for, and I will choose whatever strategy that seems to be the best strategy. One of my former managers in corporate America used to often say, "I reserve the right to improve the process at any point in time." Right? So talk about a time when you were locked into the outcome that you were looking for, but you were open to pivoting and trying different ideas to get to that outcome.
Absolutely. I kind of touched on it during with when I initially came up with the concept of teaching kids and wanted to do it. It was all about starting a nonprofit and getting it that way. And I had to literally think to myself, what is the end goal? My end goal was to expose kids, our youth, to aviation. It doesn't have to, and what does that look like? And honestly, I was just like, I don't know what that looks like. And the fact that I didn't know what that looks like was now I have to be open to everything. The end goal was exposure, exposing not just them, but exposing the community, exposing their parents, and showing them that how it could change their life. And so, because I was open and it kind of had to build the plane literally while I was flying it. Um, I had to be able to pivot and look for different ways. And even when I started off with just my AEP program, and I figured that was going to be after school, my after school program, because I had a day job. And I was just like, this is what I'm going to do. During that process, when I got my second school, the first thing they asked me is, can you do an in-school program? I'm like, I work during the day. But I'm open. And I was like, well, I said, let's see what we can do. So they end up giving me first period on a Wednesday.
Mm,
And I was like, okay, I'll go in. And mind you, I'm thinking it's going to be all about airplanes and aviation. It switched to drones because that's what they were learning about. I was like, okay, well, let's talk about drones. I can talk about drones. And so that started the drone. It went from just conversations around drones to now I have a full-on Part 107 drone prep program in two of their schools. So it's constantly evolving.
mm,
And I constantly have to remind myself, leave yourself open. You don't know where this road is going to take you. And I'm gonna credit Anne for this because this is what she told me. She said, we look at things and we think our plan is that big, but God's plan for you may
mm.
be so much bigger. And you have to be open to that. And that's one of the biggest things that I have to learn is just constantly being open and ready to pivot at any moment.
Yeah. We also got a question from Victoria Long Coleman. She wants to know, what mental conditioning have you had to unlearn in order to become the kind of leader who ensures clarity and purpose? We all get these well-meaning maxims that we get from family. What did you have to unlearn in order to be who you are right now?
I have to unlearn a lot. Coming from a strong, close-knit family with Southern background and just way of thinking, from how I view the world to even some parts of my aspects of religion and how I see religion. Growing up in a Baptist home, but going to a private Catholic school for throughout my life. So there's a lot of things that I had to unlearn, and one of the biggest things that I did was started reading books for myself, and started questioning every aspect of what I thought in my process early on, start questioning those thoughts, my beliefs, questioning my own beliefs. Well, why do I believe it? Do I believe this because of I was told that this is the way it's going to be, or what factual evidence do I have? So that became a big thing with me. When people tell me things, I'm like, is that fact or fiction? And so, if it's fact, let me go read it for myself. Just because you tell me, military trust but verify, I'm a strong believer in trust but verify. So that was one of the things that I had to go through the process of questioning and seeking out the information for myself, whether it be in books, whether it be talking to people, getting their perspective, remaining open in everything I do.
I love it. I love it. Important elements of success for sure.
Absolutely.
Dr. Peter?
Yeah, good stuff. I want to kind of finish up with the questions because we're getting so close to the end here, Aaron, as it relates, and this has been such a powerful conversation. I want to take it back to your military roots a little bit. Yes, I can do that because I'm the host today, and I'm an Army veteran as well. But again, as I mentioned, we will not hold the Air Force against you. I did have a daughter who went to the Air Force also. So, but what things have you carried, maybe even persistence type qualities that you've carried from your Air Force service that you even have until this day? And I heard you allude to them a little bit. I can think of the discipline, even how I see things right now. I heard you say the trust but verify also. What are some qualities that you even apply to this day? And it may help someone who's watching and listening that they can also apply it to their lives also.
So definitely the trust but verify is
Yeah.
one of the biggest takeaways that I still use from the military. And the expect the unexpected. You know from being in the military, nothing's guaranteed. Only things how does the saying go? The only thing that you it's about change. The only thing you can expect is change. Or the only thing that's guaranteed is change. So as I navigate through life, or as people navigate through life, their lives, things are going to happen, good and bad. And you have to not get comfortable and when you're in the good times, just like you can't get comfortable when you're in the bad times, because that it can change on a dime. Something can happen and totally change. And that's one of the things that military has taught me is being ready to pivot, being ready to change. That mission that you thought was going to go down just the way we went over in briefing, in theory, once you got in the real world, it was like, this looks nothing like what we talked about. And life is like that. We have these granular thoughts on how things are set up or will be set up. And as we start getting into the real world, they're going to change. And you have to be ready for that change and be ready to pivot. If not, you're going to be stagnant. And you now like what we talked about. Say that again.
No, I think we had some
Oh,
feedback. We had some
okay.
feedback there for sure. But go ahead, you're good.
No, no, no. So I think that's the biggest lesson I take away from the military, is be ready to pivot at any moment because change will happen.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I definitely subscribe to that. Change is the constant, the one constant in our lives for sure as well. So Ann McNeil, we're getting ready to land us this plane, but I'd be remiss if we did not talk about this, not this conference, but this annual accountability meeting, and then maybe your aha moments as well, if you don't mind.
Of course, that's why you heard that in the background, because I'm practicing sharing that. Okay, listen, I am a work in progress. So, Galen, we're going to talk about this annual meeting. That's a cue. Okay. I am excited not only to talk about the annual meeting, but I am excited because I've made a commitment to have 50 groups present at our annual meeting for your life in January 9th and 10th. And in Boca Raton, this is for our Think and Grow Rich International Mastermind meeting. This is our annual meeting. Again, it's for your life. It's not for your business. It's not for, it's not a conference, as Peter said. This is for your life. And what we basically do is we bring together the mastermind groups. Now we can bring individuals also, but if you are in a mastermind group, we are hosting a Q&A meeting every Tuesday, and I will put all these details in the chat. And I think Doretha's on, so Doretha, if you can help me out here in YouTube and drop the information in the chat. But every Tuesday, we have a 30-minute Q&A at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. And the purpose of that is to be available for anybody that has questions about how do you start and run a successful mastermind group. And the reason I want to have at least 50 groups, whether you're currently in a group or you're starting a group, the reason I want to have at least 50 groups present is because when I look at Lewis and I know what's happened in his life because he's in a mastermind group from Bob Proctor. When I look at Galen and Peter, and I've experienced the last, how many years is it? 2, 3, 4, 5?
Too many.
You know what? See, that's why he's hosted, because he's got jokes. My point is this: they're in a mastermind group. I met Aaron Allen as a part of our Black NSA $1 Million Mastermind, which I created almost 10 years ago for the National Speakers Association. And I see what has happened in the lives of over 1,000 individuals. Now, the mastermind groups that I'm talking about are for family and friends, and it's free. And it's free masterminds for family and friends. And we're asking you to bring your life in writing. Share your spiritual, your family, your financial, your education, your health. How about the personal development area of your life, your business or your career, your profession? What about the recreation, creativity, and civic area of your life? We have a survey. You can just check the box. But I'm taking a new attitude about this event because I think it's critically important for me, to whom much is given, much is required. When we know something, we need to say something. And so I'm putting the fire up underneath my you know what to do a better job to elevate this. Because when I think about my own family, my own life, and the lives of so many of you that's even on this podcast, the impact of having an accountability group, whether it's once or twice a week or once a month, that's holding you accountable. And I see Peter shaking his head up and down. I see Lewis shaking his head, and I see Galen just staring into the camera because he can't even begin to imagine what his life would be like if he did not have accountability from his mastermind group. So I'm being a little long, but January 9th and 10th, 2026, you can go to the International Masterminders. That's International Masterminders with an S.com. And you can register internationalmasterminders.com, and you can register there to join us in January 9th and 10th. We start on Friday evening with open mic. You just share. But then on Saturday, we have a full program, and you are sitting at a table with just 2 or 3 other individuals, and you are sharing your life in writing. That's all I'm going to say about that. Every single week when I get the opportunity. Well, I'm talking about it every day anyway. So that's it for me. And McNeil, my aha, I wrote down intentionality. When you said intentionality, to me, that powers persistence. And Aaron, when you talked about the will and the habit, you mentioned the 8, and I know I'm not going to get into all of these, but you mentioned the 8 steps to ensure persistence, and willpower and habit were the last 2. But real quick, definiteness of purpose is a key. Desire, self-reliance, accurate knowledge, cooperation, all of those things are also keys. But when you started talking about that in the very beginning, the intentionality is what stuck for me. And that was my aha. Thank you so much for sharing.
Good stuff there. Oh, and before you go, how do we stay in touch with you? Did you already say that? How do you stay in touch with
No,
you?
I did not. I just rambled on about this. So I was a little too excited. You you can connect with me by texting the number 59925, and in return, I would give you my what I call my uh, outline for success, if you will. And in the text, when you text the number 59925, just put the word "and" in the chat. 59925 and in the chat. Thank you.
Good stuff. Louise, come on in and tell us some of your aha moments that you heard about in this conversation today with Aaron.
Thank you. I go to the last part, just like Anne went to in the beginning. To me, is that embracing that change and be
Mhm.
persistent through the change. Because we all here have had career changes, uh, evolution, right? It is part of life. So we have to embrace that change. The only thing that is secure in life is change. So that was my aha moment. That's that no matter what, the next thing, the next step in my life, it can be completely different, 90-degree change in my life in the direction that I need to go with the new career, the family, just coming back from the military, right? And then all of a sudden hit the ground with a brand new family with two kids and have to become a different person in a different role. And you just literally had to go through it with persistence, with that desire, with knowing the outcome. What is the outcome? I guess that's what Anna was saying right earlier. Once you know the outcome and you want it so bad, no matter what is in the way, I'm going to get it. So to me, that was it. Change. And you guys can find me on every single platform as Luis Jimenez or Luis Fernando Jimenez or Luis Jimenez coaching.com, and anything that you need, I can help you to get there, just like any of my friends right here. If you know what you want, we can help you to get it. Thanks.
Love it, Louise. Thanks so much. Hey, folks, if you're watching, we're going over just a few more minutes. Stay with us because we're going to land this plane even better than we took it off there, right, Aaron? Like that
Absolutely.
analogy, folks. Land the plane. Okay. Galen, your aha moments as well as how we stay in touch with you, sir.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, just another incredible conversation. And I guess I don't know if this is an aha, but I just love how universal these principles are, how they transfer from industry to industry. And I love what Aaron said about many of these things we do naturally. And the problem with doing things well naturally is you have a tendency to think that there's not a formula, right? This is just something that you just do. Well, chances are there is a formula, and you might be doing 7 of those 10 steps naturally, but those other three could be the key to your success. So I would encourage everyone to make sure that number one, you got a copy of the book Think and Grow Rich, and number two, you're doing more than just reading it, but you're actually following the process because although you could be doing 7 of those steps naturally, the last three, the last 5 could be the key to your success. So that has been the key aha for me. My name is Galen Bingham. I am the leadership strategist. You can find me on every platform. But the most fun way is to follow my podcast. Our podcast is called Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. We talk to leaders all over the world about the whiskeys they drink, the music they listen to, and what they believe it really takes to be an effective leader. We're actually in our 8th season right now. We are having so much fun. I double dog dare you to try us at least once. Guarantee you that you will get something that will help you take at least one more step towards the life that you are intended to meet.
Good stuff. Good stuff there, folks. Definitely check out Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. Aaron, this has been a great conversation. But how can our audience stay in touch with Aaron and keep up with the great things that he's doing for our community?
So the best way right now to keep up with me is go through my website. And you can contact me through that is urban aviation group G I mean urban aviation grp.com. So it's urban urban aviation grp.com, and through there is a link you can click on, and you'll be able to grab a hold of me and reach out to me as I expand into more of the social media world onto more platforms, I will definitely post it on my website.
Good stuff. Hey, I want to definitely thank you so much for your time today. This has been a phenomenal conversation. Your stories have really demonstrated what persistence can look like in our lives and even how to overcome and be persistent. So thank you so much for that. Hey, folks, this has been another phenomenal edition of Think and Grow Rich Live. My name is Dr. Peter A. James. You can find me on so many different ways. LinkedIn, I got a website, I got this, that, or the other. But we're not even talking about me right now. Right now, it's about Think and Grow Rich Life. If you have not picked up Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, today is your day. Dive in, begin to soak it up. And as Ann McNeil always says, the more that you read it, the book begins to read you. Hey, folks, every Saturday, same time, same channel. Thank you so much for being a great audience. Look forward to seeing you next week as well. Take care.